Hello everybody and welcome back again to Mass Effect 2. Yes, we're back in Mass Effect 2 for one last time because I have promised to give you a bit more of a thorough review of the game now that we have finished all the DLC. I did a very similar thing for Dragon Age Inquisition back then. However, for Inquisition I had the benefit of being able to use the Dragon Age Keep, which gave me a very nice summary of, the missions and the characters. So I guess for this game I just have to improvise a little bit. So I just thought, let's go to my quarters, listen to some relaxing music, and I don't know, stare at my fish tank while I talk about the game. I already spoke a little bit about a few things during the credits of the main game, specifically about the main story or the lack thereof. So I don't want to repeat all of that again. But I think there are a few points that I want to address, and after that I will talk about the characters in particular and about each character individually, basically. But yeah, let's go back to, well, what little there is in regards to the main story. And as I mentioned before, most of the issues that I have with this game actually pertain to the main story. And that kind of starts with the whole premise of the game, which in hindsight seems kind of pointless and kind of contrived, because the whole Cerberus thing and the whole, dying and coming back from the dead, it didn't really seem to affect the main story as much as it should have or could have. So in hindsight it feels more like, a gimmicky plot device to set up a story without actually having a major impact on it. I mean, sure, they mentioned the fact that she was in Cerberus now, and there was some interactions that related to that, but I feel that 80% of the main story would have been the same if she still had been a Spectre. So I don't know, it felt like something that wasn't really, needed for this game. And in hindsight, it was really just, a device to, cut her off from her previous ties, while at the same time setting her up with all the resources that she needed to fight this battle. And as you know, I was not a big fan of how they basically Mary-Sued Cerberus from a rogue Black Ops / terrorist organization into, I don't know, some shady version of the Avernus Initiative, basically. Because, I mean, that's kind of what they are in this game, aren't they? So, yeah, I don't know, I feel there should have been more in regards to the whole Cerberus thing, to the fact that she died and, isn't dead anymore. It didn't really seem to matter in the end. It didn't really seem to matter. And the other thing that I have some issues with now that I've played Arrival, the main plot of the main game seems a little bit pointless, because apparently the Reapers were planning a full-scale invasion of the galaxy anyway. After their first attempt at an invasion during Mass Effect 1 was foiled by Shepard, they apparently just, said to themselves, well, screw that, we're just going to take the next relay and, invade via, that relay if we can't use the Citadel relay. Which makes sense. That seems like something the Reapers would do, that, screw that, those pathetic organics can't fight us anyway, so we don't need to destroy Citadel first, or we don't need to, kill their leaders first. We can just, take whatever mass relay we want. But what's with the Human Reaper? I mean, what point was there in trying to create this Human Reaper when the full Reaper army was just waiting at our doorsteps anyway? So, I don't know, this whole plot about the Reapers using the Collectors to target humans specifically and just abduct, small scale human colonies. I don't know, this sort of plotting and scheming doesn't really seem to fit the Reapers as we have learned about them in the first game. So I don't know what the Reapers were trying to accomplish here, because I mean, apparently when we destroyed the Reaper, it was still in a very early stage, and finishing that Reaper probably would have been taken years. So by the time the human Reaper was ready, the full-scale invasion probably would have been launched anyway. So I don't know what the Reapers were trying to do here. It seems kind of pointless in the long run. And it really just made the Reapers look like, I don't know, common thugs, you know, abducting some colonists, and I don't know, it wasn't the same level of threat that we had in the first game with Sovereign, and the Collectors. I mean, they tried to make them threatening, you know, in the intro where they destroyed the old Normandy and stuff like that, but they just didn't have the same, I don't know, charisma, so to speak, as Sovereign had, or as the Reapers in general have. And we didn't really see any Reapers in the main game until the very end, and that was a human Reaper, which I still think was kind of tacky compared to Sovereign. I mean, Sovereign looked so awesome, and there was this aura of, you know, mystery and awe about this completely foreign and alien creature. And compared to that, the human Reaper looked like an oversized piece of Halloween decoration. I'm sorry. So, not a big fan of that, and this whole, I don't know, humanity is such a special snowflake trope that we have to target them specifically. I don't know. I like the Reapers better when they were just, you know, these alien, godlike creatures with a motivation that was almost beyond human comprehension, and they were just targeting all organic life and not, I don't know, specifically humans or specifically one person like Shepard. So I don't know. I liked Arrival because of that, because it brought back the Reapers as we met them in the first game. So I'm very excited about the next game, because apparently we're actually dealing with the Reapers again. So I'm curious about that. Anyway, let's skip. No, let's go to the next part, which is the characters, because I kind of understand that this game was not so much about the main story and about the enemy that we fought, but it was about your companions and you know, building up a team and having them work together. So this was the main focus of the game, and it's probably what I should judge this game by more than, you know, the main story arc. So let's just talk about all the characters, and I suppose we're just going to do them in the order in which they entered our team. So I guess the first one would be Jacob. I think we saw Miranda earlier, but Jacob was the first that actually joined our team. So yeah, Jacob. Jacob, to be honest, I didn't completely get Jacob as a character. I feel that his characterization was done kind of sloppily and kind of lazy, because he seemed to contradict himself a lot. First, when we spoke to him, it seemed like, you know, he really believed in what Cerberus did, and he signed up because he liked their vision or whatever. And the next time I spoke to him, he was kind of critical of Cerberus, and he didn't trust them and stuff like that. And I couldn't really make sense of Jacob. And it didn't help that his interactions with the female Shepard tended to be kind of awkward. There was some weird tension going on. There was Shepard flirting with him even if I didn't intend to do so, and Jacob being very defensive about it, and it made everything awkward, and it made me very careful about this character, because I didn't want to go in that direction. So yeah, I was a bit worried of him, and like I said, he seemed to contradict himself a lot when talking to him. Then we had his personal mission, which was about his father. Now, I have to say, I did like that mission. I thought it was a very interesting and thought-provoking mission. However, it didn't really relate to Jacob as a person. Most of the other companion quests, they told you something about that character. But Jacob's mission, well, okay, it was his father who was involved there. But even before that, Jacob and his father were not very close, and nothing that Jacob's father did on that planet related to Jacob in any form. So it was an interesting mission, but it was kinda off topic, I guess, because it didn't really flesh out Jacob as a character. So that didn't help. So he was kind of a weird, vague character, and he had a mission that didn't really, relate to him that much, because it was mostly about his father. So yeah, it was a good mission, but I don't know. It didn't really seem to matter for Jacob. So let's go to the next character, which would be Miranda. In regards to Miranda, I have to say, I actually sort of admire the writers for bringing in a character and making her sort of not very likable at first. It takes some guts to do that, to bring in a character and present her as somebody who, somebody that you may actually not want to like at first. And then you can, slowly get to know her, and maybe you actually can change your mind about her. And I feel in case of Miranda, it was like that. So at the beginning I was a bit, I don't know if I like this lady, because first of all, she was the most pro-Cerberus person that we had, on board. And she came across she came across as kind of arrogant at first. Nevertheless, the more you got to know her, the more, complex her character became. And I really did enjoy that. And her personal mission actually related to her as a character, and it told you something about her as a character, especially why she does what she's doing and why she is so loyal to Cerberus and stuff like that. So that was actually good personal mission, in the sense that it actually was about the person. And what I really liked was, when I brought her along at the end to the final mission, where she kind of quit Cerberus by telling off the Illusive Man. That was an interesting bit of character development. Although I have to say, it came a little bit out of nowhere, because if I remember correctly, the last time that we spoke to her, she was still mostly pro-Cerberus, in that conflict with Jack. She was still very defensive about Cerberus and their work. And then finally at the end, she suddenly changes completely. Came a bit sudden, but I still appreciated that bit of character development for her. So while I wouldn't say she was my favorite character, I think she was a well-written character, and I think she had some good development over the course of the game, specifically with that ending. So that was my two crew members that I got at the very beginning of the game, and I think then we went to Omega and picked up Mordin. No, actually we picked up Zaid first, because he was right at the entrance of Omega. But I think I'm going to address Zaid and Kasumi at the end of this, because they were DLC characters and a bit of a special case here. So let's continue with Mordin. I think Mordin was, in a way, a backwards case of Miranda. So he was somebody who came across as kind of likable at the beginning, and in his personal mission we kind of discovered the darker side of him, and stuff that he did in the past. And I actually think that his personal mission was probably one of the most interesting ones in this game. And it also had one of the few decisions that felt like they actually mattered on a larger scale than just, the personal influence on the character. Because we had to decide if we want to destroy the cure, if we want to keep it, and that would not only affect, Mordin, but this may have larger implications in the end. And there were not that many decisions in this game where you felt that they would have longer lasting implications, because most decisions only related, to a specific personal quest. I don't think there were any big decisions in the main story at all. Were there? Well, there was at the very end. You could decide whether you wanted to destroy the collector base or not. But before that, I don't think there were any decision points in the main story. So all the decisions you had to make were in the companion quests. But this particular decision felt like it mattered more than, other decisions. And just generally speaking, very interesting mission in terms of, morality. And I'm still very conflicted about the whole genophage issue. I can see the point why it was done at that time, but at the same time it feels like something that is just really wrong and immoral to do that, to do. So it's really hard to judge this if you're not actually in the situation and have to make that call. So I'm really fascinated by this whole complex issue of the genophage, because apparently the Krogans were trying to just overrun planet by planet, and there were not like completely innocent victims. So there are two sides to this issue. Anyway, Mordin as a character was definitely one of my favorite characters, because he was just, well written, and as you know, I like it when the writers actually, give their characters distinctive speech patterns, and that certainly qualifies for Mordin. He was interesting, he was funny. I just loved to talk to him, which is why at some point he apparently thought that I was, interested in him, which was actually kind of funny. So yeah, really liked Mordin, and all the complexity that came with his character and his personal mission. So the next character we picked up would be Garrus, I guess. We also picked him up on Omega. I was very happy to see that we actually have some returning characters as well. And specifically Garrus, who I liked a lot in the first game. I was a little bit disappointed. Apparently the character development of the first game was completely disregarded in this game, because if you remember in the first game, he was kinda at a crossroads, and he was trying to figure out how he wanted to, pursue his goals of bringing, justice to the galaxy. And Aerith more or less tried to bring him to a path where she said, if you want to do that, then you have to do it right. And you shouldn't, just go gung-ho on the entire galaxy and do whatever you like, because that's not going to end well. You have to do it right, and you have to do it in a proper way. And it seems like that at the end of his personal quest in Mass Effect 1, he understood that and said, yeah, you're right about that, and I shouldn't become like the people that I'm trying to hunt. But in this game, this was kind of ignored, and he went full vigilante anyway, and it ended as awful as you would expect, where he got his entire squad killed. And he seemed very bitter and jaded, which was kind of sad to see. But okay, so this happened. Apparently, whatever lesson Aerith tried to teach him in the first game didn't really take. But then we got his personal mission, which actually was sort of similar to his personal mission of the first game, only a bit more personal, but it was still about, unfinished business that he thought he had to finish. And again, it ended with a question of whether, he just, wanted to kill that person, or whether, he wanted to do it in a more proper way. And again, Ares tried to, discourage him from just, killing people. And that actually was one of the more difficult decisions in this game, because you had to decide between loyalty to a friend and, doing what he wants and what he thinks is right, and doing what you think is right. And Ares, basically, relied on her own moral compass and said to herself, no, I have to talk him out of that. And I think this was an interesting dilemma for her, choosing between loyalty and morality in this case. But as I probably mentioned back then, sometimes you also have to stand up to friends and tell them when they're wrong. And you shouldn't just blindly follow them and let them do anything they want just because they're your friends. Sometimes you have to make a stand and, tell people when they are about to make a mistake. So, still, very interesting mission. I like that one a lot. And I hope that Garrus will not be quite as bitter and jaded in the long run. So, yeah, it still was great to have him back. Although it seemed like he had less dialogue than, some of the other companions. Which is, I guess, because he already was in the first game, so the writers probably thought that he doesn't need as much dialogue. So, yeah. Anyway, it was nice. It was nice to have him on my crew again. All right. Now I try to remember who we picked up next. It may actually have been Grunt. Let's talk about Grunt. So, I feel that Grunt's role in this game was a little bit like, writers sat down and thought, well, we want to add a Krogan to the party again. So what can we do that the Krogan will not be just, some random generic Krogan, but a special Krogan. The problem was in the first game, we already had Rex, who already was sort of a special Krogan because he was a lot more thoughtful and sensible than many other Krogans that we met, and maybe a little bit deeper, I don't know, because a lot of the Krogan we meet in this game, they are sort of generic, stereotypical, they like to fight and they like to drink and they are loud and unapologetic and all that stuff. And apparently the idea the writers had, so if we want to make a special Krogan, but he can't be, the Krogan misfit like Rex, let's just make a super Krogan and make him like pure Krogan and extremely Krogan. And so he was like, all those Krogan stereotypes crammed into one person. I thought, however, the concept of having, basically a person that just came out of a tank but is still already fully developed and has all those imprints, that was pretty interesting. And I also liked the way that Grunt spoke, because that was actually not so stereotypical. He had a very interesting, almost poetic language, I thought. And he actually sounded very deep at times, a lot deeper than what he actually said. The content of his the things that he said were not as deep as the way that he said it. But I really liked his kind of weird, mysterious sort of speaking. Other than that, I felt that he could have used maybe a little bit more detail in his character. Like I said, he was basically just, everything we knew about the Krogan put into one character and amplified by a lot of stuff. So, I don't know, he was fun, he was an okay character, but I didn't think he was that interesting overall. And I'm trying to remember his personal mission here. Oh, right, it was the one with the initiation. Yeah, it was an interesting mission because we had to fight a Thresher Maw, and I nuked the Thresher Maw with that super weapon. um, Other than that, I don't know. It was an okay mission, but not the most interesting one of the game. Okay, who would be next? I guess it was Jack. Jack actually was a really interesting character because it was one of the few times where they actually painted Cerberus in a more negative light. And this is something that I appreciate about the game. They didn't try to completely whitewash Cerberus as opposed to the first game. So they didn't, try to make them into some new super organization, but they still, hinted at the fact that these people have done some very, very messed up stuff. They toned it down a little bit by, bringing up the fact that, oh no, the Elusive Man didn't know about any of this, and if he had known, then he would have shut it down much earlier. That seemed like a little bit of a cheap cop-out, but at the very least, they brought in this character that was critical of Cerberus, kinda as a counterpoint to Miranda, and I thought this was a good decision and a good move. Jack as a character herself, she was a difficult one. She was very hard to get to talk to, and to get her to open up. And she didn't really open up that much, which I think was fine, because I think it would not have been believable otherwise. I think it would have been too easy if, Shepard just waltzes in and suddenly manages to fix her, and at the end of the game she is just well balanced and happy. That would not have made any sort of sense. So she was still very angry at the end, and she was still, it's okay, we can be sort of friends, but it's probably better if you just leave me alone. So I kind of like the fact that she didn't really change that much, but still got enough character development to make her interesting. So I like Jack as a character, and it's also why I actually picked her for an important task in the final mission, where she had to protect the group, because I thought this would round up her character development quite nicely. So really liked Jack, and I liked her personal mission because, like I said, it was one of the few occasions where they were actually critical of Cerberus. The other one was the Overlord DLC, but that one was released after the game, so it was the only time in the main game where they were, critical of Cerberus. Who was next? It probably was either Thane or Samara, but let's talk about Thane. Now, Thane was interesting because he introduced an entire new species, which also brought back one of the problems of the first game, where the characters, they not only had to introduce a character, but also the culture and the history of their species. So a lot of the dialogue of Thane related to the Drell and Hana in general, which was okay and very interesting. And yeah, I guess they tried to add enough about his character as a person as well. There were maybe a few too many, tropes in his character. The assassin, cold-hearted assassin that does his job, and then he meets a woman and falls in love, and then the woman gets killed, and he goes out for revenge to avenge her death. I don't know. This is something you feel that you have heard before a lot of times. This trope. So That could have been done a little bit better with a little bit more of an original setup, I think. What I found interesting about Thane is, given the Mass Effect writer's penchant for daddy issues, that he was basically a reverse daddy issue, because he had issues with his son and his son had issues with him. So it was sort of an interesting twist on that theme that they like to bring up so often. I thought that his personal mission was very touching, and it felt like, he really cared about his son. The end of the mission seemed a little bit too good to be true, so okay, we managed to prevent him from killing the guy he wanted to kill, and the hard-boiled detective had a heart of gold and gave him, an easy punishment. So everything worked out nicely at the end. Maybe a little bit too nice, but I guess this is somehow how this game works. If you make the right decisions, then stuff just works out magically, and in this case it did. Other than that, I think I liked Thane as a character. Like I said, there were a few too many stereotypes about, assassins and stuff in his persona that I feel could have done differently. I did like the aspect about, the Drell spirituality and stuff like that. Yeah, I think he was an interesting character and a nice addition to my crew. All right, let's talk about Samara. I'm not sure if she was actually the next that we recruited, but it may actually have been Tali, but let's talk about Samara first. Samara was an interesting addition because her motivations and her lifestyle seemed really foreign and alien, and they also seemed a lot different from what we have learned about the Asari until now. So bringing up this new aspect of Asari culture was actually very fascinating to me. I think that her personal mission had an interesting mechanic gameplay-wise, because you didn't actually fight, but you had to lure out Morinth, and then you had to kill her at the end. I honestly think they could have done more with this story, because there was more potential in actually explaining, Morinth's motivations and how exactly her, genetic defect or whatever influences what she's doing. I mean, was she just driven to do what she's doing by her genetic makeup, or was she just plain evil and liked to kill? I feel that Morinth would have deserved a stronger characterization. Now apparently it is possible to kill Samara and then recruit Morinth, so maybe I would actually have to do that to get to know Morinth a little bit better and her motivations for doing stuff. I feel there was a lot of potential in that mission and that character, and maybe it was resolved a little bit too quickly, and I feel at that point, unless you're really renegade, there was little motivation for you to actually kill your crew member Samara over the psychopathic sex killer Morinth. So it was a weird decision at that point, and I think there should have been more about Morinth the character before we made that decision. But other than that, I thought it was a very interesting mission because it was different from the other missions. And Samara herself as a character, I mean, she seemed very cold and aloof, but again, at the end, it felt like she opened up a lot more to Shepard. And, I think they actually became kind of friendly at the end. There was some very nice scenes at the end of her, dialogue chain that I enjoyed a lot. Although Samara really needs to get a better outfit. That outfit is horrible. I mean, seriously. It it's a tie between her outfit and Jack's outfit. I'm not sure which one it actually was. Okay, but let's go to the next character. So let's talk about Tali. Again, a character that came back from the first game. I think in the first game I sort of complained about Tali being little more than a walking codex entry for the Quarians. So they had a chance to fix that in this game, and they sort of did. We definitely got to know a little bit more about Tali. Not so much in the dialogue, because like Garrus, she didn't really have much dialogue. But at least we got, you know, her companion mission, which told us a little bit more about Tali. But again, I felt it told us more about the Quarians in general and the Geth-Quarian conflict and, you know, their politics and the different factions on the migrant fleet. Then it told us about Tali. We know that Tali is loyal, very loyal to her people and her father. But we already knew that in the first game. So I feel they could have done more with Tali and gave her a little bit more in terms of dialogue, for example. But it was definitely an improvement compared to the first game, where most of what she told us was just, about the Quarians and their culture and their history and stuff like that. Also, the Tali mission, I guess this was actually one of the few times where Shepard actually chose, an option specifically to support her friend as opposed to what she may thought was right. So she decided not to reveal what has been going on that other ship because she didn't want to implicate Tali's father. But I think this was partially because she felt that the whole trial wasn't really about Tali in the first place. She wasn't really involved in that in the first place, and she shouldn't be the one suffering from it because she did nothing wrong. So it didn't feel right to take her the punishment for what her father did, and that's why she chose to not reveal what her father did. And it was really just, it felt more like, a conflict between different Quarian factions than it actually seemed to be about Tali. And I think that's why Shepard decided to, no, I'm not going to play along with your stupid politics. You have to figure this out on your own, and you're not going to drag down my friend into this. So we chose the option to keep it a secret and let the Quarians work that out on their own. Finally we have Legion. I hope I didn't miss any of my companions, and I'm going to discuss the DLC characters after Legion. The obvious problem with Legion was that you got him so late in the game. Most of his dialogue took place post-game. It was interesting to actually, have a Geth as a crewmate that was more than... He actually seemed like an individual, although he apparently wasn't. He was like a bunch of programs running in that platform. Especially since, in the first game, the Geths were really just, your standard generic enemy. They weren't even like organic, making it even easier to just kill them because, they were just machines. You're not actually killing people here, you're just disabling machines. That was basically your impression of the Geths in the first game. So, changing the story to say, well, the Geth you fought in the first game were actually the evil Geth, the heretics, and there are Geth that don't actually want to fight you. It does feel a little bit like a retcon, but I don't really mind, because I always like it when they, try to be more ambiguous about your supposed enemy. And if they show you that maybe your enemy, the enemy that you have been fighting for so long, isn't quite as bad as you think it is. I mean, they still have the Batarians in this game, who are basically your go-to enemy for everything that's bad. So I wonder if at some point they will actually try to redeem the Batarians as well and present them in a more ambiguous manner. I don't know if it's going to happen, but they did it for the Geth, and I do appreciate that. And I gotta say, Legion was kind of adorable at times, and his apparent being starstruck by Shepard. I feel it should have been explained a little bit more why exactly he was so impressed by Shepard, but I just take it as such, because it was kind of cute actually. And his personal mission, the one with the heretics, again, that was actually a really difficult decision, because both decisions felt kind of wrong. So it's always nice if you have decisions that aren't clear-cut, good, bad, Paragon, Renegade. And in this case I actually chose what the game considered to be the Renegade option, which was a bit weird, because up until that point Shepard had argued about rewriting as being unethical for the most part. So I decided to destroy them, but the game then kind of made it sound like she destroyed them because she thought it was the safest option, which wasn't really her motivation. I think they maybe could have done this a little bit differently, like in Mordin's mission. You had different options for making the decision whether you wanted to destroy the genophage or not. Like, I think Shepard took the option of saying, let's keep the information because it can't hurt to have it, and she wasn't really making a moral verdict at that point, which she could have done. And I think maybe they could have added a few more options for the Geth mission as well, just for the sake of roleplay. I mean, the result would have been the same. I mean, she would have destroyed the Geth, not because it was like a safer option and she wanted to make sure that the heretics can't do anything anymore, but because she thought it was less unethical than rewriting them. I don't know. So it was an interesting mission though, because like I said, it was actually a decision that was difficult, and I feel there were not that many difficult decisions in this game. Okay, so I sincerely hope I haven't forgotten any character of my normal companion. So let's talk about the DLC characters. Zaid. No, Zaid was basically a book full of anecdotes. So basically, whenever you talk to him, he told you an anecdote of his life, which was I don't know. It was kind of funny. At the same time, it got a bit ridiculous after a while. That for every incident, he had some anecdote to tell, and I guess it told you something about his character as well. But it also seemed to deflect a little bit from his character, because he never really talked about himself, only about, stuff that happened to him at some point or the other. I did enjoy his personal mission though, because again, that was a decision where you had to make a decision between what you thought was right, which in this case was not to let the poor workers of that refinery die, or ensuring the loyalty of your crew members. In this case, Zaid, who wasn't a friend at that point, so it wasn't loyalty to a friend, but it was sort of loyalty to one of your crew members. And again, Aerith she stuck to her guns and said, no, we're not going to kill these workers just because you are on some revenge trip. And it worked out in the end, but apparently this could have gone poorly very easily, because at the end you needed to charm him into loyalty, which I could, but it could have gone wrong, and I may have lost his loyalty, as I have learned later. So that was actually an interesting and pretty bold move to make it so that, I say, the moral decision, which is like not killing the workers, may actually have bad consequences for a change, while the renegade option, which is, just letting those workers die and just making sure that, Zaid gets his job done, is kind of like the easier way, because it would ensure his loyalty one way or the other. I do like it when, the renegade and the paragon options actually can have different end results, which very often is not the case. You can just, pick whatever, and they both work equally well usually. So that was a very bold move to say, okay, you can do what's right here and you can save those people, but maybe you will lose his loyalty then. That was interesting. That was really interesting. But I mean, it did work out for me at the end, which apparently is in no small part due to the fact that I did his mission very early, and since I had a lot of, Paragon points that carried over from the first game, I had a relatively high percentage at that point. If I had done his mission much later in the game, I may actually have failed that last charm option, because I mean I had a decent sized renegade bar. I can actually have a look at this. As you can see, I am full paragon, but I'm also like at least 1/3 renegade. So with a score like that, I may actually not have been able to use charm very late in the game, because it's based on percentage. So that is kind of a weird decision by the writers to make the renegade and paragon system work like that, because it kind of means that a lot of decisions are a bit down to chance. You may fail them or not, depending on when you do that mission. I was lucky, I was able to charm him, but I do like the idea that you may fail it if you try to rescue those people. And yeah, finally, let's talk about Kasumi. I like Kasumi a lot. I don't know why, because she wasn't the most complex character I feel, but I don't know. I just enjoyed her company for whatever reason. I like kick-ass girls, so I guess that's one reason why I liked her. Her role on the Normandy was a bit strange. I mean, if I'm going to recruit a crew to fight some invading alien force, then recruiting a thief is not my first idea. But I mean, it worked, and she was in my crew, and she was helpful, so there's that. And while she did not have a full dialogue wheel as DLC character, what I liked about her dialogue was that she was actually referencing, stuff that was going on the ship, and very few of my other companions did that. So she was talking about other crew members, and she was talking about a mission that just happened. I mean, just short sentences about it, but she spoke about it, while other companions usually didn't really acknowledge what was going on, and didn't really acknowledge what happened to other crew members. I really like that about her. So when I talk to her, she may have something to say about Garrus, about Samara, or whatever. And I think the game should have had more of that, acknowledging the fact that maybe my crew members interact with each other as well, and they're not just sitting in their quarters and staring out of the window or whatever. Plus, I really liked her personal mission. I mean, that was kind of fun, a bit of a diversion from the normal missions. So yeah, while she was not the most complex, not the most deepest character, I really liked her. I really did like her. Okay, so I hope I have covered all of my companions now. Let me think. Did I miss anyone? No, I think I've got them all. If not, then I will be terribly embarrassed, and I'm sorry for that. But I think I'm good. So maybe to summarize this, I still think that maybe they should have cut down your crew roster by like 1 or 2 characters and focused a little bit more on the remaining ones and gave them more dialogue, because compared to the first game, most of them had less dialogue, I feel. Specifically, returning characters like Garrus and Tali. But most of the personal missions were interesting enough to make up for that. And I mean, that's kind of the point, because since the game doesn't really have much going in terms of the main story, the real charm and I think the real appeal of the game obviously is, interacting with your crew members and trying to help them with their problems. I still think it's kind of weird that 80% of the time you were just, playing Dr. Phil for your crewmates, and the rest of the time you were fighting the collectors. Was it really necessary to bring back Shepard for that? I mean, I feel that in this game she didn't really do anything that was so extraordinary that nobody else could have done it. I mean, the whole group therapy thing with your companions, I feel somebody else could have done that as well. But, well, I'm not complaining that she's still alive, so fair enough. But yeah, so I did enjoy the interaction with your crew and the fact that there were conflicts between different crew members that you had to resolve. I spoke a little bit about how maybe they made it a bit too easy on you to avoid the conflict by using your Paragon charm points. But that is sort of how the game works. I already spoke about it at some point, so I'm not going to go into that again. There were a few other points that I thought were really well made about the game. First of all, the design of the game was definitely an improvement. In Mass Effect 1 we had lots of planets that looked kinda same-ish, and they definitely changed that in this game. The Citadel was a little bit underwhelming compared to the first game, but they brought in some interesting new places like Omega and Ilium and stuff like that, so I really like that. The gameplay obviously was a huge improvement. The cover system was still slightly wonky, but not as wonky as in the first game, so I actually took cover this time, which was much more needed in this game than it was in the last game. In the last game at some point I just, tanked my enemies and just didn't care about them shooting at me, but in this game you actually had to use cover, so I learned to do that. Is there anything else that I would like to talk about? Maybe a few words on the DLC. The DLC, I thought all of them were actually very well made. I especially liked the music in the DLC. The music in this game was pretty good in general, I think. I like that. I liked how specifically Arrival set up the next game, and like I said, I feel that in Arrival, for the first time in this game, I felt the same level of threat again that I felt in the first game. So Arrival made me really excited for Mass Effect 3, even though story-wise Arrival was a little bit thin. It was mostly the atmosphere that I liked about that DLC, I think, more so than the actual story that was going on. Also, speaking about atmosphere versus story, the final mission of the main game, the suicide mission, was pretty well made. That was a lot of fun, making the decisions and picking your crew members, and that was a really well done mission, and it was needed because most of the other main missions of the game, they weren't really that memorable. I mean, they were kind of there, they were difficult and they were exciting, but they didn't really had much story going on. It was, most of the time was just, you know, go in, kill some people, and then you got a bit of information, and then you came back to the Normandy and waited for the elusive man to reappear and send you on the next mission. But the suicide mission, that kinda stuck with me. Whereas I can barely remember what I did in the other main missions, even though it's not that long ago that I played them. But the finale was really epic and intense. They sort of sacrificed the story for, I don't know, some flashy action, but I guess I'm okay with that. So that was fun. And yeah, I don't really think that I need to talk that much more about this game. Maybe, how does this game compare to the first game overall? I find it difficult to judge, because a lot of the weaknesses of the first game were improved by miles in this game, in terms of gameplay, in terms of world design, in terms of character interaction, specifically the character missions. The dialogue not so much, because I think there was less dialogue, but the missions. But a lot of what was really amazing about the first game fell a little bit short in this game. You know, the story, the sense of awe and mystery at the events that were going on in the first game. I didn't really have this in this game. And so I find it a little bit hard to rate these two games against each other. I may actually have enjoyed the first game a little bit more, just tiny little bit, but I still had a lot of fun playing this game because it played a lot more fluidly, and it seemed a little bit more like, you know, just blunt entertainment, as opposed to a little bit more of a deeper story of the first game. But I really liked playing this game, and I'm really looking forward to the next game, which as far as I know is sort of controversial, specifically the ending. I remember that a few years ago there was a bit of a buzz about the ending of this game. I don't really know what it's going to be about, but I do remember that there was something going on with a lot of people being disappointed or even angry about the ending of this game. So we'll see how I will judge that. But for now, I'm really looking forward to Mass Effect 3, which, as I said, will start next Tuesday. I haven't actually started playing it yet. I will probably do so once I finish this recording. And yeah, that's pretty much all that I have to say for now. And I think, well, this video is almost an hour long, so I think we should probably call it a day now. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my final thoughts on this game. I may have brought up a lot of critical points, a lot of criticism, but I feel that you know, the criticism is more interesting than just, you know, praising what was nice about the game. So this may sound more negative than my impression of the game actually is, because I did enjoy it a lot. So yeah, let's make a cut here. Aris Shepard is now going to bed, and we will see what awaits her in the next game. So thank you for watching, and see you again in Mass Effect 3.